Welcome to the Fantasy Football Healers program, a show that is Dynasty Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Dustin Brown, and with me is my co-host, Colten Palmer.
How's it going, everybody? Man, I'm getting consistent now. That's what, 3 weeks in a row? Might as well just call me Amon Ross St. Brown, man.
Ooh,
The consistency is key.
it has been a lot better having you on, I will say that. You can find us at FF Healers and at FF Captain 22 on X and also now on YouTube. Just search FF Healers for shorts, podcast videos, and fantasy league related videos.
Yeah, they get to see our beautiful faces now. Maybe that'll bump up our viewers with that lovely stash you got going on, man.
Hey, you got one going there too, it looks like.
I got the full. It's connected. It's the full beard combo. You know.
I can't get any beard going here. I can get like one or two hairs here and there. I've always said I can just maybe grow one hair and do like a little comb over to the other side, maybe.
There you go.
Or I could do a Jay Cutler neck beard. I got a good neck beard that I could make.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to shave. My wife is older than me, and so when I shave, I look like a small child. So she says I'm never allowed to cut it off. So.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a baby face in too, and then my face is long, so having the mustache kind of breaks my face up a little bit more. Dad had a mustache, and after having kids, I just kind of stuck with it. And initially, I just wanted to look older, and now I just like it.
I remember you shaved it one time when I worked with you, and it was kind of scary.
Was that when I dressed up as Ace Ventura Pet Detective for Halloween?
Yes, it was.
That was the last time I shaved it.
Really? I was gonna say I was not expecting it, and you look like a whole different person without it.
That had been like 4 or 5 years ago, I bet.
Uh,
Maybe
si-
longer. It had been a
it was
six or
about
seven.
it was like 6 or 7. I've been gone for about 7 years from there, so 6 or 7.
Wow, time does go by very quickly. On today's podcast, we're going to be going over buys and sells in Dynasty Fantasy Football. But before we do that, just a couple things I want to hit on. We've got news. We've got some important dates that are coming up here, Colten, that we need to probably talk about. And then also a very, very short segment of where are they now? So
Oh,
I think we need to jump into the news first, though, Colten.
hit it.
I'm going to start with some of the most important news that has broken over the last week or so.
The Vikings are out of the playoffs.
You had to start with that.
Yeah, you hurt me, I hurt you.
I was prepared for it there, Colten.
There was a funky beat going into that, man.
Yeah,
Let that play
it's
out.
whatever I could find online. But yeah, saving my tears for another day. I don't know. Do I just go into it right now about the LA fire narrative component
Oh
of that
man.
game? And it's very sad to say, but we've seen it with the Saints after Katrina. We saw it with the Patriots after 9/11. We've seen it with the Bucks after they had a hurricane, and now we're seeing it here with the LA fire. Just trying to raise the spirits for LA. It's a very devastating injury, but I wish they would keep it a little bit more out of football in regards to making sure that things are a bit more fair. I don't know if you ended up seeing that Matthew Stafford fumble touchdown that was said on the field, but had New York call it as an incomplete in the first half of the game that completely changed the direction of the game.
I did actually end up seeing it. I saw it on Twitter and the debacle between all of it. It's
Absolute garbage.
definitely in an odd call. Arms
The
going
arm wasn't
forward.
even moving forward, Colten.
Arm is pitching forward, but the head's
Not
down and the
pitching,
body
not
is
pitching.
crumped
Arm was
over.
extended forward, not moving forward, and wrist was extended. No quarterback in their right mind throws a ball in a squatting position, not looking up, with their arm extended, with their arm off to the side.
Definitely a wild call. I mean, there was the ups and downs of the Vikings. I didn't unfortunately get to watch the game. I only got to see highlights. My internet went out at the right time. Router just died on us, so didn't end up getting to watch the game, but seeing the highlights, it just looked like, the Vikings were kind of out of sync on offensive as well. And I mean, yeah, some of those calls, but just
They can't keep going for money balls when they're getting sacked 9 times. So I will say
yeah,
the Vikings did mess up as far as the game plan. Don't get me wrong, but you completely turn the game around when you recall that fumble for a touchdown on defense, and you completely take the wind and the momentum out of the Vikings when it would have been 10-10. Instead, it was a 21-point swing, and then we're trying to like score with just a few seconds left on the clock before halftime, end up getting sacked on the 40, and then they have a go-ahead touchdown. Next thing you know, it's 24-3 going into halftime instead of a much closer game that could have been.
yeah. I mean, let's just talk about the real winner of that game, though, is JJ McCarthy. I mean, it. I think it brings him a job back to Minnesota. I think there is troubles if Sam Darnold took him deep into the playoffs, and now that Sam Darnold looked like he started a pumpkin over the last few weeks, I mean, definitely gave JJ McCarthy a lot more hope that he's going to step into this starting role next year, or at least at some point during next year. He at least has a job in Minnesota. It sounds like the trade talks are off the table now.
That was
And
ridiculous to begin with. There was no way they were going to be trading him, especially with this poor quarterback draft class.
yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings were never going to re-sign Sam Darnold, regardless of how far that they went. They were going to let him go. He was going to get $100 million, probably guaranteed. Now that's probably a little bit closer to that $60 to $80 million range. But I still think that Sam Darnold finds himself a job, and but it would have never been with the Vikings. I think the Vikings are still going to get Daniel Jones under contract for 1 year, $10 million, the exact same that we paid for Sam Darnold, and reset or rewind back to this year where JJ can be behind a veteran quarterback. And when the Vikings feel that he's ready, then we put JJ into the lineup.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, that was what this game was about, though. For me, fantasy football wise, I am. Vikings are my second home team, so that was definitely a bummer to see them go down that way. But good news if you are a JJ McCarthy owner, you're going to have them in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, which is awesome.
Well, funny you say Kevin O'Connell. Did you know that Kevin O'Connell is not currently under contract with the Vikings? He is not. He's not been extended yet.
I did not know that they didn't. I didn't know his contract was up this year.
So
Well,
very
they better
interesting.
they
I
better
think
get him under
they're gonna
contract.
get him. I think they're gonna get him locked in. Don't get me wrong, but like he's not a Minnesota Viking right now.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, no, they need to lock that down. He is a phenomenal head coach. It's probably the best one the Vikings have had in a long time. So,
They need to
um,
lock him and Flores up.
yeah, they definitely need to lock Flores. Apparently Flores, I think he's going to be staying in Minnesota. It doesn't sound like he has a whole lot of interviews, and it sounds like he burned a lot of bridges when he left Miami there. So there's a lot of teams that are kind of soured on him just because of that.
Give him another couple of years with the Vikings, and then he'll find himself a head coaching job again. You mark my words.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So now we'll go into the real news that I was planning on talking about, but I knew we were going to talk about the Vikings. It's a sad day, but the Minnesota Vikings still had an unbelievable season. We were supposed to be in rebuild, still won 14 games, only lost to 2 teams the entire season in the Rams and the Detroit Lions. And yes, Colten, we are the first team in NFL history to lose in the wild card with having 14 wins. But you can skew the numbers any which way. Let's just remember, like, it's only been within the last year or two that we've only had one team that's been on like a bye week. So I suspect that in the past, those 14-win teams had a bye and they were pushed off into the divisional rounds anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw a lot of good teams this year. It was just a very good season for a lot of teams. The fact that they went in there 14-2 or in the wild card is just absolutely insane. And the fact that they didn't win their division at 14-2 because the Detroit Lions are so good and the Rams were so good. I mean, it was just an actually awesome year for NFL.
Yeah, it sure was. And we'll look in here to this playoff games here this weekend, and we'll really see what's happening. I think the most interesting game this weekend is obviously the Buffalo Bills versus the Ravens. I think the winner of that has a good shot of making and perhaps winning the Super Bowl. I think the Kansas City Chiefs get a easy win against the Texans. I don't think the Texans are much of a team right now. They have one receiver that I can come up with in my head, and if they stop him, they stop the Texans.
You don't stop Nico Collins, man.
But you can.
You
But you
just
can.
you just hope you just hope you can.
You just double team him, and they have no other options. No other options at all. And even Joe Mixon's beat up right now, so they can't even lean on the run against Kansas City. And Kansas City's usually pretty good against the run. So I think Kansas City, although it's going to be a close game, I think Kansas City still wins it.
I agree.
Yeah. And then I think the other game that's going to be fun to watch is going to be Washington versus the Lions. I think that's going to be a really close game as well. I think closer than what people think. And how about Washington? How about Washington with completely
Wild.
changing the culture and drafting the right guy? And I just overheard just the other day, like, just think of all these past coaches that they could have had with the Bears. They could have hired all these coaches. They could have drafted Daniels with the first overall pick, and just think of like what the trajectory could have been for the Bears.
I mean, just imagine being a Bears fan, being, picking wrong all these years. Just a tough day to be a Bears fan, always.
Yep. And the Bears are also, it's always kind of tough to be a Bears fan, but you know what else is being tough? It's tough being a Cowboys fan. The Cowboys have extended the quarterback Will Grier with Trey Lance and Cooper Rush heading for free agency.
Oh boy. I mean, I think they're gonna just, with the new head coach, I think they're gonna go for a full reset, anyways. Um,
You said about a new coach, you just kind of touched on that here. I mean, Coach Mike McCarthy out with
yeah.
the Cowboys.
I don't blame him. That one is one of the ones I absolutely agree with. Mike McCarthy he's a good head coach. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's bad by any means, but they just need a culture change there. They need something different, something swapped up. They need someone that'll stand up to Jerry Jones, honestly. And I don't think Mike McCarthy had the backbone to do it. They're going to have to bring someone in that has the cojones to just tell Jerry to butt out that he's going to do his own thing. And Mike McCarthy just didn't really have that. I think he did towards the end because he was like, I'm losing my job anyways. And they started to win games. So, I mean, but he didn't have enough of the cojones to stand up to Jerry Jones to tell him to get out of his football team. So until they do that, they're going to have some struggles.
So we saw Mike Vrabel get signed with New England like we had projected just this past week. Who do you think ends up being the coach there for the Cowboys?
That's a tough one. There's so many teams looking for head coaches right now that it's just kind of hard to project who's going where. I mean, there's been rumors of so many people, and I've been just trying to follow all the news of all the interviews that have gone done and everything. So it's definitely going to be tough to predict that as of right now
Yeah,
until
some of the names there, Colten, that I've heard is Robert Saleh as a potential hire. Obviously, Deion Sanders is a big name that's getting floated around because they're trying to make a splash. And, Jerry's not getting any younger either. And I'm not sure if I've heard any other names other than mainly Sanders and Saleh as a potential. Oh, I have actually. Jason Witten's name has actually come up as a
Jason Witten
potential head
was one.
coach. But
Yeah,
didn't they learn from New England? Like, that didn't work.
no. And the thing is with them, I did read a quote from Deion Sanders himself, asking him about going to the Raiders or going to Dallas there. It's just he said that he loves Colorado, he loves Boulder, and he loves what he's kind of built there. I don't think Deion Sanders takes a head coaching job in the NFL this year. I don't think. I mean, he's getting paid enough from Colorado to be a head coach there and build up his resume even more. I think he truly does enjoy just coaching college as of right now. So I don't think he takes a head coaching job this year.
And I disagree. I think Coach Prime, he definitely built the culture with Colorado. He built Prime. And, a place that needs a complete rebuild that could be in his image I don't think it's the Cowboys.
The Raiders.
I think he wants to touch somewhere else, and I think he wants to touch a franchise that's in a flashy area, and that's Las Vegas Raiders. I think it just fits Prime's culture. The silver and black, I think, would look sweet on both his son and himself, and they're in a position where they could draft his son, and I think that's exactly what Dion wants to be with. I think he wants to be connected with the son with the NFL. And I think that's the only reason why he took the head coaching position there with Colorado, was to really give his son a chance to get drafted early in the NFL. And we'll see here in April where his son ends up making it to. But I really think that the Raiders are the franchise, and Tom Brady is kind of leading the charge where he's trying to get this team in a new direction, because it's been lost right now. It's been lost in Vegas.
I mean, it's been lost in Oakland and Vegas.
Ooh.
It's just a poverty franchise as of right now, and trying to rebuild it. And once again, it's another owner that likes to kind of stick his nose into things, that doesn't really know what he's doing. So, I mean, just let the managers and coaches do what they do best. Like, that's my biggest thing. Owners, get your nose out of it if you don't know what you're doing. Stop. You pay these people millions of dollars to do this job, and then you're like, oh, you just got to shove it in there. Get out. Get out.
Get on, get.
Get out of here.
That's pretty much all I had in regards to news. I think it was pretty good, kind of touching base on some of these coaches. As you said, there's a lot of teams that are looking for hires. We didn't touch on, Doug Peterson has now left the Jaguars. He's going to find himself somewhere. There's some the Bears are obviously searching for a coach as well. I've heard them looking under rocks like Riverboat Ron, and now they're looking at McCarthy, and they're looking at all these washed up coaches. And I think that Mike McCarthy is going to find himself back in the north with the Bears, and things are still just going to stay the norm for the Bears. Nothing's going to be moving forward in my thoughts.
Oh no, absolutely not. I keep sending my buddies to people that or just people that the Bears are interviewing, because they're both big Bears fans, and they interviewed with the Cardinals offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. Garbage, and I sent it to him right away. I'm like, gosh, I hope they hire this guy. It'd be incredible. He couldn't run an offense in Arizona. Just put him on the Bears. He'll fit right in.
So, Colton, we got a very, very short segment. It's called Where Are They Now? These are some players that were once thought of as assets in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And we'll start with one of your past Colts running backs, Evan Hall. Where are they now?
I want to say he was on the practice squad and got picked up by the Rams.
He has now signed with the Steelers.
Oh, the Steelers. Where did he go after Indy? Because he signed with somebody after Indy, or was it directly to the Steelers?
I have no idea. I
Okay.
just saw that he had signed with the Steelers, and I thought that was an interesting spot. He was a guy that I really thought highly of coming out of the combine and even going into the NFL draft when he was drafted. Evan Hall was one of those guys at the combine that after every play that he made, anytime the ball was in his hands, he ran it all the way, Colton, all the way to the end zone. Every time.
He looked like he was going to be something, and just, man, he could not. Got his chance after both Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor got hurt, and then he got hurt. So just couldn't.
It's never really
together.
had a chance.
Yeah.
Skylar Thompson, quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, the backup to Tua over the last few seasons, has now been signed with
I don't even have a clue.
the Steelers. The Steelers are going to steal.
Just scooping them all up, huh?
Well, they don't even know who their quarterback's going to be next year, so it's probably not a bad signing. I just don't see him like actually sticking to the roster. I don't think Skylar Thompson is really that player that we're really excited about. But for a short time there, when Tua was injured, we wanted to know who the backup quarterback it was in Miami. And Skylar Thompson, he was dropped by him earlier in the season, but now is signed with the Steelers. And last, and certainly not least, this is the one that I think is most interesting. Where are they now, Colton? Deontay Johnson.
Oh, he's back on the Ravens. He just
Back
went
on the Ravens.
full circle.
Circle of life.
Just kept going.
So Colten, he was with the Panthers, actually looked very good with the Panthers early this season. And then right around like that week 7, week 8, he had been traded to the Ravens. No, was he let go or was he traded to the Ravens? I think he was traded to the Ravens for very, very cheap. It was like a switching of picks, only like a few spots difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so that should have been a red flag right from the start when you see a productive player and he's getting traded for pennies. Then he's let go by the Ravens and was picked up via waiver wire for the Texans. He played last weekend with the Texans. I think he had a catch or two. And then he got dropped, Colten, by the Texans on Monday or Tuesday this week and was repicked up via waivers by the Ravens. He is not eligible to return this season, and his season is over. But what do we do with Deontay Johnson?
If anyone's willing to buy him off of you, sell him. If not, he's just kind of a hold right now to see if there's any teams that will pick him up. I mean, he's not worth a whole lot is the unfortunate part. So just you're hoping that a team will pick him up and maybe he turns his attitude around. But what is it with these Steelers wide receivers? And as soon as they're off the Steelers, just become absolute bombs. Like I don't get it. Mike Tomlin is a saint for putting up with all these guys and keeping them in line for so long. And then, man, it's just a wild ride.
And yet there's so many rumors about Tomlin getting either traded or moved on by the Steelers, which is blasphemy.
Bears go and pick him up.
Oh my God, I would hate to have Mike Tomlin in our division.
Oh, wouldn't that be terrible?
Oh, that would be a culture change.
That would be a culture change.
That's all I had for that segment. I told you it was kind of short and sweet. Last bit of things that we need to talk about are some important dates that are going to be coming up that we all need to mark on our calendars. Because after all, Colten, this is Dynasty Fantasy Football. We don't sleep in Dynasty Fantasy Football. We're always looking, we're always churning, and we're always just kind of grinding. And so with these next few months, this is going to be very important to kind of see where some of these landing spots are, some of these rookies. And as we get into rookie draft season, we'll have more information coming out, not just about what they produced or what they did in college, but like how are they progressing as individuals and professionals. So some of the important dates that I had written down, Colten, are the NCAA championship game is on January 20th. So that's coming up here. And we know it's against Notre Dame and Ohio State. So there's still a lot of players that are in both of these two teams that we're going to be watching very closely to see, how well they produce with the lights on. We've got the Shrine Bowl. That's January 30th. And we also have the Senior Bowl that weekend on February 1st. So Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl. I'm not sure how much you weight that, Colten, but I really like to see some of the players that are developing, some of the storylines that come out during their practices during the week, and just kind of see how they kind of mix and mash, especially with some of the divisions that are kind of on the weaker end, but very productive, just kind of seeing how they produce against some of those number 1, number 2 corners that are actually going to be drafted in the NFL. We've got Super Bowl February 9th, Combine February 24th through March 3rd. And then finally, you got franchise tags that are going to be due on March 4th and free agency mid-March. So, and then obviously the NFL draft in April. So we've got a lot of dates coming up that are important. And, stay tuned to the Fantasy Football Healers. We'll try and continue to keep you posted with all the latest news and notes about these rookies that are going to be coming out in 2025.
Yeah, I really started getting into my my video footage of these rookies. So I'm pretty excited for all these things coming up here.
Colten, we're going to be talking about rookies, and we've got plenty of time to talk about rookies in, maybe as early as next week. But for today, we're going to talk about some of the buys and sells at each position. So we're going to try and give you 2 buys and 1 sell at the quarterback position, wide receiver, running back, and tight end position. And Colten, would you like to kick us off? Let's start at the top with the quarterbacks.
Absolutely. And mine is as a buy that I said was last year. He's still a buy, even after finishing as the quarterback 5 on the year, and that is Baker Mayfield himself. So Baker Mayfield finished this year as the quarterback 5, or 4 actually, and depending on how your league is. One of my leagues he finished as 4, and he was at least 10 at the last 2 seasons, or he was 10 last year as well. So the fact that he's sitting at keep trade cuts quarterback 15, which is insanity to me. How Baker Mayfield's sitting, people are just extremely devaluing him still, even after what he's done these last 2 years. I just don't understand how he's sitting there at that mid range when he's been a top 12 quarterback back to back years. He has proven that he can do it. He has proven that he's going to do it. This is his team. You know, people might be getting a little edgy just because, Mike Evans is starting to phase out. Chris Godwin is no longer under contract, but we saw what he did with Jalen McMillan. So the fact that he can do that with Jalen McMillan, a rookie wide receiver that was kind of, a developmental piece, and he really turned him into something there at the end of the year. So I like Baker Mayfield. I'm still buying into him. And, the fact that that's where he's valued at on keep trade cut as of right now, that's kind of what I'm going to be absolutely focused on, trying to get him on my rosters this year.
Wow, Colton, that's unbelievable. I really like how you brought in about like where he finished at 4 or 5 at the quarterback position and keep trade cut at 15. I
15.
mean, he's such an undervalued quarterback. And, if you had Baker and you were playing him this season, you were ecstatic with the points that you were getting, especially in Superflex. You said that, they're phasing out Evans. Really? Have they? Because here's another 1,000-yard season by Mike Evans, 11 years in a row, tying Jerry Rice's record. He was crushing it when he had Chris Godwin before injury. And as you said, McMillan, he really started to develop. And we talked about how McMillan was one of the better wide receivers that were with Washington last year. And they got him just by discount. And there's also a lot of speculation that they're going to draft another wide receiver in the offseason that could be a top 3-round wide receiver to kind of fill in also, because we don't know what's going on with Godwin, because right now he's not under contract. He's a free agent, Colton. So
Right.
I love what you're saying there with Baker. I think that's an excellent buy. For me, I'm digging even deeper. I like to scrape the barrel when it comes to some of these positions. I'm kind of I'm what they call a little bit of a kind of cheap there, Colton. So with kind of looking at like the cheapest like quarterback in Superflex, they can be very valuable. And what I would say is we've already talked about Sam Darnold probably more than likely being out with the Minnesota Vikings. I've already told you like who the next guy up is, and it's not JJ McCarthy. It's Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones is a buy for me in Dynasty Fantasy Football, especially in your Superflex leagues. He's got the rushing upside. He's been productive with the Giants when he plays and when he's healthy, and that's without having any receivers whatsoever. What do you think is going to happen now that he has a number 1 wide receiver in Justin Jefferson? He's got Addison. He'll have Hawkinson. And then who knows what he's going to have in the backfield outside of Aaron Jones. But he's got all these receiving weapons. And you can get him cheap. I've seen him dropped in Superflex leagues. You can potentially get him off of the waivers in some of your leagues because people have completely given up on Daniel Jones. And I'm not just saying go out and buy Daniel Jones. Colton, I've went out and I've bought Daniel Jones. And you know what I bought him for? I bought him for super cheap.
I was going to say, here's some names that are going kind of around him and like keep trade cut, and that's Jameis Winston, Adam Thielen, Calvin Austin, Aiden O'Connell, a late third.
A third, right?
A late third.
a late third. So this is what I had sent. I had tried sending Kendre Miller for Daniel Jones, which I thought that was a pretty good trade. That failed. I tried sending Matthew Stafford earlier, about a couple weeks ago, for Daniel Jones and the 108 Superflex. But this is what got it to go through. I sent Joe Flacco, Demarcus Robinson, and Juwan Johnson for Daniel Jones and the 402. Oh, and a 26 4th-round pick. What do you think about that?
Not too bad. I mean, I would not feel great. It's definitely not a dopamine hit from buying Daniel Jones, but especially in Superflex, you need those depth guys. We see it every year. The quarterbacks getting hurt and rookies not being quite ready to step in, so they got to start. Sam Darnold was seen as that depth piece last year and ended up being a valuable asset for everybody this year. So buying those it's not the dopamine hit you really want to get getting that good trade, but definitely a piece to move around for fantasy football.
It's definitely not a dopamine hit, but we've kind of seen it over and over again. And this is, if O'Connell sticks around, which I think he will. But, Sam Darnold, he finishes as the quarterback 9 in fantasy football. And if last year at this time, if you would have bought Sam Darnold, no dopamine hit there. But I tell you what, when you're getting all your wins this year and you are now in the playoffs and potentially winning a championship with Sam Darnold, like, talk about a dopamine hit.
Yeah, no, definitely a great feeling if you can get that.
Yep. And he's done it with other quarterbacks with Mullins and Dobbs and naming some other scrubs, but Daniel Jones is much more talented than some of those quarterbacks. He's a first round NFL quarterback. Give him a shot.
Hey, so is
And
Trey
as a
Lance.
Minnesota Vikings fan, I'm all in.
Trey Lance is a first round quarterback.
Hey, he's again, you can scrape the barrel, you can see what you have in him, but you know what the difference between Daniel Jones and Trey Lance is Trey Lance wasn't given a chance. Daniel Jones has been given a chance for multiple seasons, and I just think that he's shown enough talent that he can be a viable starting quarterback in the league. And I don't know what to make of Trey Lance.
Oh, Trey Lance is done. That's career's over. But Daniel Jones at least has a shot to kind of revitalize his career, and what better head coach than KOC to do it?
Who are you selling at the quarterback position?
So this one might come as a little bit of a controversy, but he's sitting there right behind Baker Mayfield. That's Brock Purdy. There's been a lot of smoky rumors going around that maybe the 49ers kind of are looking to go away. And like I said earlier this season, I was never high on Brock Purdy. I thought he was an okay quarterback that kind of just gets the jobs done. And, if as long as Brock Purdy has his weapons, he's going to be a fine quarterback. Well, we saw Brock Purdy lose a lot of his weapons this year, and the 49ers season did not go well. Having Christian McCaffrey out, Brandon Ayuk out, Debo Samuel in and out. George Kittle was a reliable asset, which is awesome. And we saw some guys kind of come out of not the woodworks, but kind of guys step up, and Juwan Jennings and Jordan Mason. But it wasn't his superstar studded cast that he had every single year, and the season just didn't go well. And they have nothing invested into this guy right now. And he has to get paid this offseason by them. So has he done enough to get paid? I think so. But there's some rumors going around that they could move on. They could draft somebody. There's a lot of things, and risks that I don't want to take, especially with someone that you probably got either you got him off the waiver wire. Nobody drafted him. So if you can turn it in now and get a first round pick or a first plus or just a couple of nice assets out of selling Brock Purdy, that's what I would be doing. I mean, because, we saw his ceiling. He finished, I think, as quarterback around 10 or so, the back quarterback 1 area, which is awesome. That is an asset you want to have. But I think that's his ceiling. So if you can get something more that can turn into something great before the floor falls out, which I don't know if it's going to, they could re-sign him and he could be just fine. But just holding that asset that could kind of deteriorate there, it makes me nervous, and I just want to kind of trade it in and get what I can out of it right now.
Yep. You know who else makes me nervous?
Who?
Anthony Richardson
Oh,
of
yeah.
your Colts makes me very nervous. He completely lost the locker room. He was benched for Joe Flacco in a season where the Colts were actually competitive. They thought that they had a better shot of winning with Flacco versus Richardson, and they probably were. But the whole problem is when the Colts ended up drafting him to begin with, they knew he was a project. They knew he was raw, but they just really haven't given him a chance to develop because of multiple injuries last year. And now this is a season that was supposed to be his rookie season, basically. And they just didn't give him the opportunity. And when they did, it just seemed like the whole locker room just completely fell out of favor for Anthony Richardson. You know, he didn't lose the locker room once, but he lost it at least twice. And I'm really concerned about Anthony Richardson. You know, yes, he's got the rushing upside, but how many games did he have passing where it was under 100? Well, it was under 200 yards. Maybe a better question is how many games did he play in this season that was over 200 yards? 3. He had 3 games over 200 yards and none at 300 yards.
So I actually looked at making Anthony Richardson my sell candidate because I believe just a couple episodes ago
You
I said
did.
sell him, just absolutely sell him.
I'd sell him for a second, I believe.
And at this
Sell him for
point,
whatever you can get.
so as I was looking on Keep Trade Cut, I was looking for something that you can still get something out of. But Keep Trade Cut, he's sitting at like the quarterback 22, which is just gross. I mean, that's like a late second, early third, which if that's what you can get out of him, still do it. But nobody's wanting to buy him is the problem. You can put him on the trade block, and I don't think anyone's even trying to sniff around it. So that's the only reason I honestly didn't make him my sell is because I'm like, I can't get rid of this guy. I almost have to pay someone to take him at this point. And that's the only reason I picked Brock Purdy over Anthony Richardson. But Anthony Richardson is an absolute smash sell.
Maybe that makes Richardson a buy.
I don't know if it does. I mean, if you can toss a late second, I would be willing to do that depending on what your situation is. If you
quarterback needy, especially in this class.
I mean, I think if you're quarterback needy is when you don't want to buy him. I think you want to buy him as like hey, maybe he eventually hits, but I'm not banking on it, you know? So the fact that I think he's more of like if you're a contender and you're like, I've already got 3 solid quarterbacks and I can just toss my late second at somebody to get him on my roster in case he does blow up, whatever. I don't think that's going to happen. But I would never want to be going into like a rebuild looking at Anthony Richardson going, yeah, I've got something here. Like this is going to help me. He could set you back if you're trying to trade away stuff is the problem. Because I don't know if he has another season like this year, he's out of a job. He's done. So, I mean, I don't even think he'll be given the full year. He'll be given maybe 4 or 5 games and they'll be moving on. You know, there's been rumors of Sam Darnold going to the Colts. There's been rumors of Justin Fields is another one I've been heard scraping up is Justin Fields because they have a similar play style, except for Justin Fields can at least throw the ball sometimes. So, I mean, it's like I could see the Colts absolutely going out and getting one of those guys, and Anthony Richardson is poof. He's gone off your roster. Doesn't matter. So, you know, if you can get something out of him, absolutely. But there's just nobody that's wanting him right now.
So he's definitely a high risk, high reward player, but I think you can get him fairly inexpensive. I'm not sure if you have him, if you're going to take a late second for him, that's where the problem lies. Like, what do you take for Anthony Richardson? Probably one of those bundle players, kind of a throw in kind of guy, I suspect. But here's going to be one that's going to kind of stab you a little bit. And I'm sorry for this, but who would you rather have in Dynasty?
Oh, it doesn't hurt me at all. I've been hurt too much that I'm numb.
It will, I think. Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones? That's bad that you have to think about it, right?
It's painful that I'm thinking about it. I think I lean Anthony Richardson on that one because I think he'll at least be given a shot. You know,
They both have the rushing floor.
They
Daniel
both
Jones
have.
has
They both
proved
will
it in the NFL.
have a shot, but as of right
He's never
now,
lost a locker room that I know of.
Anthony Richardson is the starter. Daniel Jones is the perceived backup. If they re-sign them, that's a big if. Minnesota, you know, if he goes off to some other team,
like the Colts.
Oh. Oh, don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you put that evil on me. But
I think we've spent enough time here with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. I think we should probably move on before we lose more viewers.
Oh man.
You want to take us into the running back position?
Yeah. So I'm gonna see what you say, but I have as my first buy on Keep Trade Cut as the running back 15. Finished this year as he was supposed to be the backup as of halfway through the season, but he finished this year as the running back 15, which is, so about where he's being bought and sold and everything. But Chuba Hubbard sitting at the Carolina Panthers running back because Jonathan Brooks retore the ACL, so he's not coming back until probably late, if at all, next season. He's cheap. You can get him. I mean, he's perceived right now as keep trade cuts running back 15, but I was getting him for a mid to late second, even after he was doing it. And this was after Brooks tore his ACL. So he's still perceived as a cheap asset on people that kind of want to move him. And you can get him real easy. He can be thrown as like usually is thrown in as kind of like another extra piece on top of other big trades too, because Chuba Hubbard's not seen as this big sexy running back that everyone wants to have on their roster. But I mean, he got the job done. He carried some people's teams and he looked good. He was extended for 3 years there in Carolina, and the Panthers, they looked good as an offense at the end of the season there. I mean, they've really kind of turned that offense around and they looked capable. And so I would love to have Chuba Hubbard on my teams. And I actually picked him up a lot already.
I love that. Last year at the beginning of the season, I ended up getting him for a third in a league. And I mean, it definitely paid off. I got him and I got Algier for a third. So I felt pretty happy with both of those guys. Hubbard was a huge win, and he helped me win a fantasy league. Awesome. He got me into the playoffs in another, and then he ended up getting injured, didn't he, towards the end of the season, which made it a little bit more challenging for my team to compete. I ended up losing and getting into the semifinals with playing for the third place spot and ended up getting fourth. But he definitely held my team together. Many games that were over 30 points in fantasy football, many games that were over 20 points. And like you said, like, the Panthers, they seem like they did it right. They put Bryce on the back burner and they let Andy Dalton play for a few games, let him kind of learn under the red rifle. And then all of a sudden when he came back, they started to win some games. They started to become competitive. And yes, they pushed themselves out of a nice draft pick, but they showed that they could be competitive. They showed some positive momentum, and that'll hopefully carry over for the Panthers going into next season. My running back that I have as a buy was also starting as the backup on a team. And Colten, I ended up sticking with the Giants. Tyrone Tracy, he's shown how electric that he was. He came out real late. He was a 24-year-old rookie running back, and you could get him at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth round rookie drafts. And Tyrone Tracy, he burst onto the scene, and the Giants, they had Devin Singletary as their projected starting running back, and he beat him out pretty quick and pretty early and showed how electric and how big his playmaking ability was. And unfortunately for Tyrone, he had a couple of plays that ended up losing the Giants a couple of games where he had fumbled it late in either overtime or the last drive of a game or two. But for the most part, he had pretty good ball security, but he could catch the ball, he could run the ball, and it didn't take him much to really make those big explosive plays. And you can get Tyrone Tracy pretty cheap. And, oh, by the way, they still have the meat shield Singletary on contract in front of them going into next season, and they've got a lot of other needs outside of running back. So look for Tyrone Tracy to be the starting running back for the Giants going into 2025.
Yeah, I do like that. He looked explosive. He looked good. He was an older prospect coming out of college. He was already like 24, 25 years old. But I mean, with running backs, we're just looking at a 2-3 year window. So if you're a contender, getting Tyrone Tracy, absolutely a major buy to have on your team. If you got that 1 year window to win a championship, he could absolutely help to do it. If you are a rebuilding team that got lucky just throwing a dart at Tyrone Tracy and you're not ready, absolutely. I mean, he's also a sell though, and at that point as well, because you got him for a third or fourth in some leagues. So moving up that way as well, because I think you get a solid year out of Tyrone Tracy. He is a later round draft pick, so they don't have a whole lot invested into him, and he's older already, so he's only going to get that first contract. But that's all you need. If you're a contender, you need that window, and you got a 2-3 year window with them. Absolutely go and smash. But here's some names that are going around him kind of on keep trade cut. So 2 spots ahead of him, Isaiah Pacheco. 1 spot ahead of him is Joe Mixon. But then behind him, you got Zach Charbonnet, Ricky Pearsall, Khalil Shakir. So right about where I would want him is definitely where he's valued. So it's not too high and not too low, which is still like a pretty good value for getting a 1 or 2 year window on a running back.
So Colton, who's your sell at the running back position?
So my sell at the running back position, and this is once again might be a little controversial, and that's Chase Brown. Exploded onto the scene out of the Bengals backfield there. Overtook Zach Moss's job. Zach Moss had some injuries, just wasn't running very well, which we've seen Zach Moss do in the past. So he took over that starting running back position. And that seemed to be, one of the sparks that helped out this Bengals offense towards the back half of the season is having an explosive running back. We saw the running backs really starting to get valued a little more as these teams were cracking down on wide receivers. But the reason he is a sell for me, I just talked about how good he was and how he helped this offense, is he was a 5th-round pick there. Um, and that means they have zero investment into this guy. They don't owe him anything. They don't owe him much. He was this, it's his 2nd year. He's going into his third year basically. So the fact that they could just easily draft another guy that would really help out their offense with a running back heavy class. I mean, Chase Brown, you probably went and got him in the 3rd or 4th round, and you can easily sell him for a 1st-round pick right now. I mean, he's coming off of keep trade cut currently.
End of
As
season, I tried buying him for a first and a second in a 1 quarterback league, and it was rejected.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off as the running back 11 right now if keep trade cut. For a 5th-round rookie, or not rookie, for a 5th-round pick that they have zero investment in, I'm wanting to cash that in. Absolutely. If I could sell him for something big, that's what I'm doing, because they could go back to the draft board this year and get one of these really good running backs that we keep talking about that this draft class is solid with, and they could take his job. I mean, I know he's good and he's looked good, but for the fact that they have no investment in him and, the fact that he's risen so much on people's boards, I'd be just wanting to kind of cash that in.
I mean, he needed an injury to be the starting running back for the Bengals this season. And let's not forget, he didn't always look good, Colton. He looked good in
Right.
college, but when he came out in like the combine and the Senior Bowl, like the dude couldn't catch, he couldn't block, he was tripping over his feet, he looked god awful. And I would never, ever tell anybody to send a late first and a 2nd-round pick for Chase Brown. But I was going for a championship, and I knew that I needed some firepower with the running back position, and instead I had to play, some less than what I wanted to running backs, and I ended up losing by less than 1 point. And Chase Brown could have been the difference, or getting a point from my kicker would have been good too. But I digress. But Chase Brown, definitely a sell. I think they bring another running back in, and they will, at the very least, split the carries.
They'll at least have Moss back, and they're paying him, so they will definitely be utilizing him at least a little bit. So definitely a sell for me to capitalize on that sweet rising stock.
So my sell is kind of a blanket statement here, Colton, and that's sell your 2024 running back rookies. Maybe outside of Tyrone Tracy and Corum. But, we got Jonathan Brooks, 2nd ACL injury late in the season. He's probably not going to be available the entire year. It's kind of another lost season. Yes, he came out when he was 20, but now, 21, 22, like, does he ever get a shot with the Panthers? I don't know. And I don't know if I want to wait around and find out. Got Trey Benson, who can't even beat Connor out. He can't even beat that Del Mercado and
DeMarcado.
DeMarcado. I can't even pronounce his name because I don't think he's a good running back. And Trey Benson, he has no vision whatsoever.
None.
Got Jalen Wright. Speaking of no vision, yeah, he's very fast, but Jalen Wright, he reminded me of Miles Sanders. He just like ran in the back of his lineman half the time. He didn't see the holes. Marshawn Lloyd, we got another Kendre Miller type of player. He just can't stay on the field. Will Shipley, poor Will Shipley.
4 running back. Is that what it was?
I thought he could have. Saquon, he completely proved us wrong. Vidal, he didn't do anything. Dylan Labe didn't do anything. Ray Davis played pretty decent, but how well do you trust that Buffalo backfield? I think if he, explodes here in the playoffs, like this game, or going into the Super Bowl, maybe you can sell Ray Davis even too. But come on, give me a break. We got a really big running back class in 2025, and they're going to completely blanket this 2024 running back class. So my sell is sell all of your 2024 running back rookies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Saquon took that Will Shipley top 24 of yours and said, Saquon this.
It was a bad take, and I will know better going into next season.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that because I have a lot of rookie running backs from this 2024 class. Getting them late. I mean, you bought them for a lot of them for a late second and whatnot, and now they're not even worth that.
No, unfortunately not. And, I think
sad.
Lloyd might be one just to hold and kind of wait and see, because we didn't see anything yet. He's kind of the mystery box. Let's see let's see what's behind door number 2. I'd rather have Lloyd over Trey Benson at this point. I'd rather have Lloyd over Jonathan Brooks. And here's the thing: you could sell Jonathan Brooks for Lloyd maybe plus a second, and now you're doubling down, and you have 2 shots of maybe getting a hit. Now, Colten, we've got wide receivers and we've got tight ends left, and I think we need to go to wide receivers. Who are you buying in Dynasty Fantasy Football at the wide receiver position?
So, the person I'm buying is absolutely, and I was buying him. I mean, he's been a buy since I think about mid-season, and that is Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. And here, let me tell you why. Tyreek wants out. He's made it very obvious. So
Once or is out.
I think pretty much is out. After you make those statements, the team's not putting up with you. You're becoming a diva that they don't want to deal with. So Tyreek Hill will be out. He's going to finally be that number 1. And we've seen him be good and productive in years past. This year was a rough season, and everybody is absolutely down on Jalen Waddle. People forget that he was at one point the reception holder as a rookie. Finished his rookie season in PPR as the wide receiver 13, then 8. He has dropped these last 2 seasons of 34 and 46, but he was dealing with injury. He was dealing with Tua being concussed and injured and everything. And he's finally just now seeing this number 1 role. And the fact that you can get him so much cheaper now, he's coming off the board as the wide receiver 24. This is the lowest Jalen Waddle has ever been as a wide receiver in this league. So some names just going around him. I mean, Chris Olave is ahead of him. Jameson Williams is ahead of him. DK Metcalf sitting right there around him or with him. Xavier Worthy sitting right there with him as well. Just with some of those names around them, I think I picked Jalen Waddle out of all those names I just spouted out. George Pickens is ahead of him. There's a real opportunity for Jalen Waddle, and the fact that he has a chance to, rise back up into that wide receiver 1 category that he used to sit in. He used to sit on people's board right around 10, 11, 12. And now that he's dropped all the way to 24, I think it's just an absolute buy.
I think that's a fantastic one. I was definitely buying him during the season. Waddle is not a guy that I was really going out of my way to get. I thought he was well overvalued going into the NFL draft, going into a lot of our rookie drafts. Going into the first couple of years of his NFL career, I thought he was an overvalued asset, especially when Tyreek Hill got on board, still overvalued. But now is the time to buy Waddle. I agree. I think that's a fantastic one. I think it's probably going to be better than the wide receiver that I'm going to be saying. I like to scrape the barrel. I think I'm kind of in between 2 guys, and maybe I got to say them kind of hand in hand. And sorry, I'm kind of cheating here a little bit. But Chris Godwin, I think, is a buy. He's getting older. He's an older asset. If you're in kind of that win now mode, I think Chris Godwin's a guy that you could probably throw a second at and get Chris Godwin maybe plus a third. There's a lot of people that are getting out on Chris Godwin, especially after injury. He's had multiple seasons where he's been productive, but he's also had multiple seasons where he's not healthy by the end of the year, and that's kind of been the tainted component with even Mike Evans. But Chris Godwin, he's a baller. He's going to be going into his age 30 season this year. And I just think that, he has an opportunity to really like increase in value. And that's really what we're kind of looking at with some of these buys. And Chris Godwin, I think, again, you throw a second and you get a third on top. Yeah, it's a little bit of value, but I think he's also going to be a productive asset on top of that. But the other guy is like, who's taking his place with the Buccaneers? And I think that's McMillan. So I think McMillan's also a buy. And we saw like how much he's really started to produce towards the end of the season with the Buccaneers, with your buy in Baker Mayfield. And so I think that those two go kind of hand in hand, and it just depends on like what team are you building? Are you building a competitive team now? I think either guy is a guy to go for. But if you're going for more of a rebuild, I think you can get McMillan still fairly cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I said it last year. The Buccaneers are like just a bargain bin there. You can buy all of their assets so cheap and they just keep going. I don't understand why people just keep devaluing these Buccaneers offensive players. It's insane to me.
Well, and here's the thing: we could probably buy McMillan all off season because we just talked about like this 2025 class that the Buccaneers may draft another wide receiver. And what do you think happens if they draft a top 3 round wide receiver? Like
I,
that's going to just start to push down McMillan, right?
yeah,
And so now you can
absolutely.
get McMillan even cheaper.
Yeah, and I'm not super. I mean, I haven't dug into the wide receivers yet, but I'm not super really over impressed with all the wide receivers. So I mean, it's going to be not a great wide receiver class. So yeah, just let it drop his value and then go and scoop him up when you can.
Now, who are you selling at the wide receiver position there, Colten?
So this one was actually really easy for me, and it's Jerry Judy. Had his first 1,000-yard season this year on the Browns, and he's still on the Browns. He's going to be on the Browns, and that is just a franchise that just can't figure it out. They cannot get it together. I think they're going to be, try. I don't know if they draft a quarterback this year. Maybe they do and start phasing Deshaun Watson out. But I could see them, just kind of bringing in, a different quarterback to help carry them through the season until they can get out from Deshaun's, and then maybe next year draft one. But Jerry Judy finally picks it up and is what fifth year now it is, and was hyper targeted with Jameis. They were slinging the ball all over, and then goes with DTR and still got it done, but he was the only one getting targets. We saw Cedric Tillman kind of pick it up this year, but then was hurt when Jerry Judy finally breaks out and everything. So Cedric Tillman will be back and healthy. It's just someone that I'm wanting to finally capitalize on. And, his stock was so high for a while, absolutely tanked when he couldn't figure it out. And now he's driven back up to like the wide receiver 36 on Keep Trade Cut. I'm trying to capitalize on that, just selling them where the stock is higher before I think it bottoms back out.
An excellent one. And definitely you want to sell them sooner than later, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you got to do it while fantasy managers are still remembering his big plays. Because once we go into a little bit more deeper into the offseason, people are going to start getting a little bit more excited about these rookies coming up. We're going to get excited about some of the landing spots, and the Browns are definitely a team that they need a lot. And so they're probably going to take some shots on some of these wide receivers. They're going to be picking up some free agents here in the offseason. They don't even know who their starting quarterback's going to be. So there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of variables. And I think Jerry Judy has always been a sell. So excellent point. And, we're just trying to find players that have value now, and we're trying to get out while the getting's good. And I think one of those players is Khalil Shakir.
I
And he was
almost
one of
picked him. I thought you were just going to be so mad if I said it.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do, Colten. I mean, he was my buy of buys, and definitely a win in a lot of my leagues this year. Having Shakir has been fantastic. He was their wide receiver one for most of the season. Keon Coleman, he was injured. That probably helped matters for him. And Kincaid is Trey Burton, and so that helped him. And the running game has been on fire. And here we are, they're going to be playing the Ravens. What do you think is going to happen against the Ravens? They've been a team that have given up a lot of passing yardage. And Shakir's going to be a guy that if Buffalo wants to win, they're going to have to give him the ball. So there's still going to be a lot of excitement even going into this weekend as they go forward. And let's say if they make the Super Bowl or even this championship game, like they're still going to be productive there with Shakir. And so it's going to be on the forefront of our minds. Like this is the time to maybe sell Shakir. Yes, the receivers aren't going to be that good coming out of the 2025 class, but there's still some pretty decent talent that's going to be coming out. They're just not the elite talent that we really want to see or hear, and it's not a very deep wide receiver class, but they're going to bring somebody in
They
the
have
free
to.
agency. They're going to be bringing in some
They have
players
to.
that are rookies because they have to, right? Because they got to compete.
I think watch this weekend too. Them going up against the Ravens. If they don't get it done today, and it's because they can't move the ball on offense or pass the ball well, then I think they're really going to push hard in this offseason to get a star wide receiver again. Because, if they are unable to, they're going to have to move the ball in the air. I mean, in order to succeed in the NFL. So if they don't get it done this weekend against the Ravens, that's what they're going to have to do this offseason is get a star-studded wide receiver. And I think that only comes at the expense of Khalil Shakir.
Include a very talented wide receiver. They're very talented. We saw all the stats going into this season. He's still very young. He's 24 right now. He averaged you about 13 to 15 points every week. You could plug him in, and he was the Mr. Consistent. And Shakir, he's a very valued receiver right now, and I don't know what you sell him for. I think you can easily get a second for Shakir.
So here's some names going around him on Keep Trade Cut.
Yeah, please share.
And that is an early second. Zach Charbonnet, Ricky Pearsall, Dalton Kincaid, Chris Godwin, Brian Robinson's around him. Tyrone Tracy's a little bit ahead of him. But I mean, there are some names on there that are some interesting assets to hang on to. It just kind of depends on this. And the hard part is it depends on this offseason too. I mean, he was the only consistent thing on the Buffalo Bills, the only consistent wide receiver you could rely on. So if they do go out and get a star-studded wide receiver, you can best bet that star-studded wide receiver is going to become the consistent one, and Khalil Shakir becomes this inconsistent, lost in the passing world of Josh Allen. Along with Dalton Kincaid, along with Mac Hollins, along with all these other wide receivers, that they only have one consistent guy is what my big fear. And if they go and get someone, Khalil Shakir is no longer going to be that consistent one.
I agree. It takes us into the final buy-sell position, and that's at tight end. That's my favorite position here, tight end. So let's see what happens here with Colten's buy.
So I'll see who your second one is. If not, I wanna mention my second one here. But my very first one is this one's digging deep. I dug deep like you did kind of last few times. So, and that's Eric All of the Cincinnati Bengals, a rookie this year, came out early, and that's extremely rare for a tight end. Came out early, looked good, makes some star catches, tied to Joe Burrow, and then he tore his ACL. Very unfortunate ending to his season after he was looking like he was starting to be integrated in the offense, had some good catches, and was really helping the team and the offense out. Tore his ACL. So a lot of people have forgotten about him. I mean, he was a late rookie draft pick anyways. You were picking him up third, fourth round. I almost guarantee you can toss a fourth rounder, maybe a late third at somebody, and they'll give you Eric All. The Bengals haven't always had a tight end that they're well known for an offense that uses their tight end. But I mean, they were really starting to integrate them. We had some games this year that the Bengals had some big plays from, their tight ends. Tanner Hudson had some big games and stuff. So the fact that he looked good early on as a rookie tight end and you don't have to buy him for pretty much nothing. I mean, I would just go out and see what you got. Take a shot on him, especially like those tight end premium leagues. Just take a shot and see what you got there.
Yeah, I think that's a good one here, Colten. My only concern is, as you said, he tore his ACL. Players coming off ACL during their first year back generally aren't as productive. I would be probably searching more the waiver wire, I think, because as we start to draft our rookies coming in the spring, he's going to be a name to watch because there's going to be somebody that just isn't tuned in like you guys are listening to the Fantasy Football Healers program. They're gonna forget about All and how productive that he was prior to injury. Like, he was putting up numbers those first few weeks with the Bengals, as you said, and he could have had a lot of more opportunities, but he tore his ACL. I don't know, what was it, October?
Yeah, I think so.
at maybe end of October. And so my concern is like, especially the tight end position, it's a pretty rough position coming back that first year. And we saw it even with the Hawkinson this year. Like they just weren't overly productive. But if you're patient and you can wait, I think you can wait these guys out. And he could be one instead of like buying. I think you just wait until the waivers open up and then you put the fab in and get your guy.
Yeah, he tore his ACL week 9. So about mid-season injury.
So that's where my concern is. I think he's an excellent buy, and I think all you had to do is say Iowa tight end, and I think you'd have everyone locked in.
Is he Iowa?
You bet. Go
Ah,
Hawks.
I thought. Oh, okay. Stover was the Ohio State, wasn't he? Yeah, you're right. He is an Iowa tight end. Oh man, every time, man, they're just so good.
Go
How is
Hawks.
how has the NFL not gone to Iowa and just to their tight ends coach and been like, "Hey, whatever you want, money wise, just come and develop our tight ends. Just come
We
and
don't
develop."
throw the ball to anybody other than our tight ends, and our tight ends they develop because we got a run game. So they know how to block, so they can catch and they can block. So it's just a win-win.
All right, who you buying?
All right, I'm buying, and you're gonna cringe, and this is why I'm buying him. Kyle Pitts.
Hmm.
I'm buying Kyle Pitts.
I'm not. I don't hate it. I
Uh,
almost.
if you have Kyle Pitts, you've been scorned this year and last year. They finally got a quarterback under center with Kirk Cousins, and we thought that he was going to get the Hawkinson treatment with Cousins, and it just didn't happen. And I think Kyle Pitts, I don't know if he's going to end up being with the Falcons past this year. I think this is he's going into his 4th season, and they can still do the right. This is going to be his 4th season. I'm pretty sure because his first year it was a rookie season.
His first season was 2020, so he just finished his 5th season.
Okay, well, is he going to be a free agent then?
I think so. I don't
Oh,
know if they've extended him yet. So
all the more reason to buy. So we don't know who Penix is maybe the starting quarterback, most likely there with the Falcons, and he definitely wasn't getting anything done with Penix under center. But I think Kyle Pitts is still someone that's very talented. He had 1,000-yard rookie season. He's very athletic, and we just know that with tight end, it takes time to develop. And I just think that Kyle Pitts is still trying to figure things out here in the NFL. And I think that's all you really need to know. He's got high pedigree. He was one of the earliest tight ends ever to be drafted in the NFL. Like, what else do you need to know about this guy?
Sorry, you are right. He's going into his 5th season. For some reason, Sleeper has it on there 2020 was his rookie
We're the
season.
fantasy
And then
football
it
healers
says no
program here, Colten.
stats.
We know more than Sleeper at
It
this
says
point.
no stats on it. I'm like, why would you put it on there if he wasn't in the NFL?
We know more than Sleeper.
Yeah,
There you go, babe.
look at that. Creating our own fantasy football platform.
That's my buy. Kyle Pitts.
I do like it. I like Kyle. I like Kyle Pitts. And, he's become like the evil hated tight end, and people are just wanting to get out from underneath him. So yes, you can probably get him pretty darn cheap at this point. He's coming off as the tight end 10 and keep trade cut. So that's actually insane that's where he's kind of sitting. Some names just around him. Xavier Legette, J.K. Dobbins, Trey Benson, Travis Etienne. I mean, taking a shot, especially in like a tight end premium league, absolutely worth it.
I think we got to throw in our bonus tight end that we both want to buy, and if we don't already have them, in Ben Sinnott.
Oh, yeah.
Ben Sinnott is a guy that, again, like you can get fairly cheap. He didn't do anything this year. He was trapped behind Zach Ertz. We talked about it last time about Zach Ertz and the whole Trey McBride narrative. Like, as long as Ertz was healthy, Ertz was the guy that was getting targeted. And we'll see here this weekend. Again, I think Ertz is going to be a guy that's going to be productive for Washington, but I don't know. I think this might be his last year under contract with Washington, which provides Sinnott the opportunity to take over as the tight end 1 with Daniels behind center.
Yeah, I mean, and people that drafted him are really down on him at this point because he did nothing, absolutely diddly. So just going out and just tossing, a third, honestly, at this point, I bet someone would take him. or
A
it would
couple
take
minor
it.
leagues, they're smarter than that. They're not selling them just for a third because they bought them for a second. So it's gonna be tough. You might have to throw a second in order to get Sanat plus a third or something back, or maybe have him as a throw-in player.
Definitely could be a throw-in player. I mean, just that little extra crumbling on the top would be always nice. People like to hang on to their picks right about now. I mean, I think if you get close enough, you wait it out, get close enough to the your actual drafts. That's when your draft picks become the highest value. Someone's staring down. They're like, "Oh, I really want this guy, and he's going right about here. I could get that for Ben Sinnott. Oh, awesome, sweet. I'll take that deal." So just having, those readily available, if you're throwing picks around, they get even more valuable as we get closer to your rookie drafts.
Okay, and then finally, tight end sell.
Yeah, so mine is absolutely Tucker Craft. This was an easy one for me to pick. And it's not because I don't like Tucker Craft. I think he is a good player. I think he is a good tight end. I mean, he came out of the draft class looking as he was one round below Luke Musgrave, wasn't even seen as the higher tight end on his own team. Came out and took the job right away. Luke Musgrave's had his injuries and whatnot as well, but even when Musgrave was hurt, it seemed like Tucker Craft was kind of their guy. The reason I'm selling Tucker Craft is he's coming off keep trade cut as the tight end 7, you know, which is pretty high for someone on an offense that is absolutely the most insanely inconsistent receiving core I've ever seen. You know, is it one week it's Watson, one week it's Reed, another week it's Dobbs, another week it's Wicks. It's just I don't I was saying last offseason I wanted to buy a piece of this Green Bay offense just because I thought it was going to be good. Well, but it's so insanely inconsistent that I have no idea. It's a roller coaster. So you can put in Tucker Craft and he'll finish as the tight end 1, 2, or 3, and that's awesome. And then the next 2 weeks, he's like tight end at 20 and 27 because they're going to someone else. It's just so roller coaster of emotions for me. So if I can capitalize on a tight end 7 value, I'm going to absolutely do it and see what I can get out of them.
Yeah, I think that's great. Sell Craft. I'm still a believer in Musgrave. And here's the thing: like the Packers could decide to move off of Musgrave and trade Musgrave, and but then that increases the value for Kraft. And so I can kind of see it kind of going both ways. And the rest of the receiving core, I think, are buys for the Packers also because, as you said, it was so inconsistent. It was hard to tell when to play any of these players, but you have to imagine that they've got to come up with some kind of plan for consistency going forward. So I think you can get any of these receivers on the cheap, but Kraft is a sell. I like that, especially at tight end 7. I don't think that's really where he should be valued at all. And speaking of players, I don't think that should be valued where they are. I think Dalton Kincaid is my sell, and it's hard to sell him when you don't have him anywhere. But he's Trey Benson. The only problem is Trey Burton, excuse me, not Trey Benson. He's Trey Burton. Trey Burton can produce when there's no other receiving options, but Kincaid cannot. And we've already talked about how Buffalo is going to be drafting some wide receivers. They're going to be picking up receivers in the offseason via free agency, and which means that now there's more target competition for Kincaid. And if Kincaid can't get it done when there's nobody else around, what do you think is going to happen going into 2025? Sell him while you can.
So the only reason I didn't make Kincaid one of my sells is his value has kind of bottomed out here. He's sitting as a keep trade cut tight end 6, which he finished lower than that in actual value. But some names going around him, he sits right there, right behind Khalil Shakir. So some names right around him, Ricky Pearsall, Chris Godwin, Brian Robinson, Kamara. I mean, the only problem I have with trying to sell Kincaid is where you had to buy him, where you paid for him, and where he's at now is you're taking a massive, massive hit to stock. It can bottom out even more. Like you said, they go and get a wide receiver and his stock could drop even more. Um, it's just the tight end room is already kind of shaky. Like I said, I mean, he was inconsistent like Tucker Craft, which is sitting, one spot there with like right behind him. So it's kind of crazy, but it's just if you have Kincaid, you paid a lot for him. So selling him at a low point like this just hurts real bad. But if you were able to get cheaper this season, I mean, it's absolutely still time to get out. But man, it sucks as a Kincaid owner knowing what I had to pay for him or where I bought him. It definitely sucks and hurts to kind of sell out at this point.
You don't think you could get for Dalton Kincaid, Tucker Kraft, and an early second? You don't think that'd be a win in this running back class or in this tight end class?
If you could turn it around for something like that, absolutely. I mean, Mark Andrews sits behind him at tight end 8. So, I mean, if you could sell him for Mark Andrews, I would do that. David Njoku's at tight end 9. If you could get him to Njoku plus or Mark Andrews plus, I would absolutely
I
take
think
that
people
over.
value Mark Andrews and Njoku a lot higher than like a Tucker Kraft. And you're telling me Tucker Kraft was one spot behind in keep trade cut, regardless of where he finished this year.
Yeah.
Tucker Kraft's value isn't at the 7th spot in
No.
most fantasy players' thoughts. But if you can just go Kincaid for Kraft plus, like I said, an early second, I think that's a win. And I think most fantasy managers like hit the button and they hit it pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just kind of turning them around for, getting some of these devalued tight ends like Mark Andrews and David Njoku, getting them devalued and getting a little on something on top and moving them that way. That's absolutely worth it.
Colten, we hit all of the buys and the sells at each position. Tell everybody where they can find you at.
They can find me on Twitter. I'm refusing to call it X. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it. On Twitter at FFCaptain22.
And you can find me at FF Healers on Twitter X. And don't forget, you can find us at YouTube also by searching FF Healers in the search bar. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button at all your podcasts and then also on YouTube. And don't forget to follow us there on Twitter X.
Yeah, you can see our beautiful faces on YouTube now. It's awesome.
So going into next week, we'll see if we can start hitting a little bit on the rookie talk. And I think Colten's going to lead the way with us here. He's got a lot of footage that he's starting to look at. I'll bring in some more details here too. I'm still kind of making my list of players that I'm going to be interested in going into the 2025 drafts. And we look forward to giving you guys all the information that we can. We are the Fantasy Football Healers program. We thank you, and we're out.
Salud.